Koalas are dying from chlamydia, and climate change is making it worse. The culprit is chlamydia, a sexually transmitted bacteria that infects more than 100 million people worldwide annually and can cause infertility in humans if left untreated. For koalas, uncontrolled chlamydia can cause blindness and painful cysts in an animal's reproductive tract that may lead to infertility or even death. Worse still, antibiotics used to treat the disease can destroy the delicate gut flora. Koalas need to consume their staple diet of eucalyptus leaves, leading some to starve to death even after being cured. The disease can also spread quickly. By 2015, that figure had risen to as high as 60%. Now, about 85% of that koala population is infected with the disease, Krochenberger said. If you think about it, that's not a viable population anymore because of infertility. Pretty much every female that's infected with chlamydia becomes infertile within a year, maybe 2 years maximum. Even if they survive, they're not breeding, he said. Experts say situations like that in Canada are playing out among koala populations across Australia, threatening populations already vulnerable to worsening bushfires and habitat loss due to deforestation.
Scientists are now trialing vaccines against chlamydia to protect the animals. We run a very high risk, if this vaccine strategy doesn't work, of localized extinctions, Krochenberger said. Are koalas endangered in Australia? There are few more emblematic Australian animals than the koala. The grey, flat-eared marsupial, which eats leaves from the eucalyptus tree and carries its young in its pouch, can only be found in Australia and is regularly seen in cultural representations of the country. But koalas face a number of threats to their survival. Apart from disease, the marsupials suffer habitat loss and are often attacked by wild dogs and hit by cars. The koala is listed as vulnerable on the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List, which catalogues species at risk of extinction. The IUCN says there are between 100,000 and 500,000 koalas in the wild, but the Australian Koala Foundation says the number is closer to 58,000. Confusion about the size of Australia's koala population inspired the government to commit $2 million Australian dollars last year to a national koala census to work out where they are and how many are left. The country's koala population suffered severe losses during the catastrophic bushfires of 2019, which destroyed more than 12 million acres of land across New South Wales alone. The fires killed or displaced nearly 3 billion animals, according to the Worldwide Fund for Nature. That figure includes more than 60,000 koalas that either died, lost their habitat, or suffered injury, trauma, smoke inhalation, and heat stress from the flames. In mid-2021, an Australian government report on the conservation status of koalas recommended the animal's status be changed to endangered in Queensland, New South Wales, and the Australian Capital Territory, as a result of the rapid population decline in those areas. In some regions, the report found populations had almost halved over just 20 years. The Australian government is drafting a national recovery plan for the koala, which will be reviewed in December 2021 before potentially becoming law in 2022. But Deborah Tabbart, chairman of the Australian Koala Foundation, says much more needs to be done to protect koalas and their habitat across the entire country, warning the marsupials could be wiped out within 3 generations. "We want a Koala Protection Act," she said. "If you really are serious about protecting this species, you would have legislation that is effective, and that means protecting the trees," she said. Campaigners say it would be akin to the Bald Eagle Act in the United States that protects the country's national emblem from threats to its population and habitat. How does chlamydia spread? When faced with the threats to the koala's habitat and food supply, chlamydia might seem like a secondary issue. But with numbers dwindling, experts said reproduction has never been more important. There are 2 varieties of chlamydia in Australian koalas, one of which, Chlamydia pecorum, is almost entirely responsible for the most severe cases of the disease in the population. A paper published in September 2020 in FEMS Microbiology Reviews said the more dangerous strain of chlamydia may have originated in domestic livestock brought to Australia by European colonizers in the 19th century. According to the University of Sydney, infection rates in some populations of mainland koalas in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria can be as high as 100%, rendering them entirely infertile. Highlighting the disease's lethal potential, a study in the Journal of Applied Ecology in March 2018 found that of 291 koalas examined over 4 years, 18% had died of chlamydia or related complications. Disease was the second highest cause of death, after animal attacks. Climate change is making the problem worse. The climate crisis has made Australia more vulnerable to devastating bushfires, such as those seen in 2019. As well as drought and heat waves. It's also making koalas more susceptible to disease. According to Australia's leading scientific body, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, the country has already warmed by about 1.44 degrees on average since 1910. The Australian government report said when the marsupials are exposed to unusually stressful environmental conditions, including hot weather, drought, habitat loss, and fragmentation, chlamydia spreads more quickly through their population. Experts say they have witnessed similar rapid explosions of disease in the wild. Krochenberger said in his Gunita sample population, a series of heat waves and droughts in 2009 and 2010 preceded a doubling of chlamydia cases. Peter Timms, professor of microbiology at University of Sunshine Coast in Australia, said once koala stress hormones rise due to environmental problems, infections often progress from a relatively minor problem to one that is more serious. He said a combination of habitat loss and climate change is causing koalas to be chronically stressed, depressing their immune systems. All that leads to poor chlamydia response. It gets them from low-grade chlamydia infections to more serious disease, he said. That's what we're doing to them. And we're doing it on all fronts. Chlamydia vaccine trials for koalas, but help could be on the way for Australia's koalas. A chlamydia vaccine, developed by researcher Timms over the past decade, is being tested among the country's koala population as a way to protect the animals from serious infections.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.